Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. Have we officially jumped the shark with Shedeur Sanders' discourse? It's a serious question, right? I try to keep what I do on this channel as close to just about the football as possible. Sometimes that's real easy. Guy like Myles Garrett doesn't do anything really off the field. It's real easy to keep conversations about him just about football and football-related stuff. There have been other times in my career where that's been more challenging. Deshaun Watson. It's a lot to feel about Deshaun Watson before we even get to the football field. And then you have what he put out there on the football field. Makes it difficult. It's not always an easy thing to do. It's not always a natural thing to do, but this is what I try to do. And sometimes it makes me come off as a little bit of a buzzkill, right? Because everybody else is having fun. And I'm like, hold on, we got to talk about the football. I asked this question of if the Shedeur discourse has jumped the shark, because I remember a while back when I was a teenager, there was this thing called Tebow mania. Now, for those of you who are younger than me, you need Tebow mania explained to you. Basically, this guy named Tim Tebow, he was a really big deal in college. And a lot of people loved him, and they loved him for reasons that weren't necessarily exclusive to football. Tim Tebow was a devout evangelical Christian, and he held the flag for that particular sect of Christianity, and he went really hard for it. Tim Tebow was also somebody who had a really humble story. He's somebody who did a ton of Make-A-Wish stuff, just an all-around real reputable guy, and a real likable guy that a certain section of America got really attached to and went really, really hard for. And that caused discourse about Tim Tebow to oftentimes stray away from the context of football, right? Like it stopped being about evaluating Tim Tebow's mechanics, his ability to play the quarterback position, and it became more of a conversation of religion. And for me, I remember one day, young teenage Quincy was watching First Take, I believe, and Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith were arguing about this thing. Skip Bayless representing the side of the country that was going nuts for Tim Tebow, and Stephen A. Smith representing the side of the country that was a bit more skeptical about this whole Tim Tebow thing. And then Skip Bayless said, "You don't get it, Stephen A. Tim Tebow is the biggest thing going. He's more box office than Kobe Bryant. He's a bigger deal, basically, than Kobe Bryant." And I remember thinking to myself, that's where we just jumped the shark. We just jumped the shark. The discourse on this has gotten so ridiculous that there is no hope for it to get back to reality. Another example I remember, young college Quincy. You know, I'm in my 20s now. I'm not a teenager anymore. I was really into Johnny Manziel in college, right? Johnny Manziel was, for lack of better words, I don't know if I can ever explain this to people who weren't there at the time, if you weren't a teenager at the time, but I'm telling you, Johnny Manziel was the coolest I've ever seen in my life. Like, he was the coolest fucking thing. Sorry, he was the coolest thing I ever seen. He had this visor, the way that he wore his uniform, how he played the game, just his overall attitude, like the coolest thing ever. Johnny Manziel playing against Alabama. I was big into Johnny Manziel as a 18, or how old was I in 2013? Yeah, I was like 18. I was big into Johnny Manziel. And he got drafted to the Browns. And I remember watching First Take, and there's a lot of conversation about Johnny Manziel because, again, Johnny Manziel was a huge deal. And again, much like Tim Tebow, a lot of the conversation about Johnny Manziel at some point stopped being about his ability to play football and started to be about how do you feel about how Johnny Manziel lives his life. And I remember watching, I think it was First Take, and Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless were arguing, and Skip Bayless said, "Hey, you don't get it, Stephen A. Johnny Manziel, he's going to be bigger in Cleveland than LeBron James." And I remember thinking at that moment, this is the point that the discourse left Earth. It's doomed. It's never coming back. I bring this up as pretext to what I believe to be the moment that I think discourse left Earth for this whole Shedeur conversation. Because Shedeur, because he is a Sanders family guy, well, not just a Sanders family guy, he's Deion Sanders' son, right? Deion Sanders means a lot to a lot of people in the country, right? And Deion Sanders has not just associated himself with what it means to be a positive Black role model in a way that not a lot of athletes before him were really doing, right? Like, yeah, other guys were positive role models, but Deion like made that shit look good, right? Made that shit look cool. Deion also has associated his image, his brand over the last few years with his religious beliefs. And, you know, he's Christian, like a lot of people in the country. And that has also become a huge part of the Deion Sanders brand. It also, because Deion Sanders is, as I said earlier, a Black man and is a iconic figure amongst many Black people, starts to open up conversations about how people feel about how Black athletes and how Black people in general are treated and what kind of opportunities do they get in this country. It becomes really easy because of everything that the Sanders family and Deion specifically represents and people associate and identify with Deion with. It becomes real easy for those conversations to escape the bubble of football, much like it was for a lot of people going back to the Tim Tebow example. And I've heard a lot of crazy things be said, but really just by, you know, fan Twitter accounts. Nobody really jumped the shark yet in the national media space. Until today. Kendrick Perkins went on a podcast. They were talking about Shedeur Sanders, and this is what Kendrick Perkins had to say.
Shedeur Sanders is the most powerful Black man since 2009. You know what happened in 2009?
Right.
That's when President Obama got elected in office. He's the most powerful Black man since 2009. You said you were sitting there watching the game in your house, and what you did? You ran with the TV.
Goddamn right,
right?
I did.
What was you doing, DB?
I was cheering. I was happy.
You was cheering like a motherfucker. When Shedeur Sanders is on the field, and when I say powerful because there's two sides of it, right? Think about it. Okay, you got the Black community. He bringing the whole Black community together. I ain't ran across one Black person that didn't said one bad thing about Shedeur.
We want him.
And guess what? Not one. Because he has the balance. He has the balance of that I'm arrogant, but I'm humble too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
He have fun with this shit.
And he having fun with this shit. And on top of that, y'all want me to say y'all want me to feel it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, he talking shit. I love that shit, bro.
He's the most powerful Black man in sports. No other, matter of fact, fuck Black man. He the most powerful player in sports.
Yeah, he said that. That is a thing that Kendrick Perkins said. He said Shedeur Sanders, most powerful Black man since Barack Obama became the first Black president of the United States. Now again, I'm not gonna make this shit about politics because I never try to do that on this channel. This isn't even about the political beliefs of Barack Obama or your standing on what you think of Barack Obama as a president. This is about the historical context of Barack Obama, which cannot be denied, which is that Barack Obama was the first black president, and that gave him an enormous amount of standing in not only black culture, but in U.S. culture and in history in general. To compare that to Shedeur Sanders is so goofy that if I did not hear Kendrick Perkins spend the next minute of that clip doubling down on it, I would have assumed that he was being facetious in that moment. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thing to say, right? It's in the same way that Skip Bayless going on TV talking about Johnny Manziel going to be a bigger star than LeBron James and that Tim Tebow's a bigger box office draw than Kobe Bryant. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, right? Like we're just putting people on pedestals that they didn't ask to be on and that they don't really benefit from being on. Like, how does Shedeur Sanders benefit from you, Kendrick Perkins, putting him on a higher pedestal than the first black president of the United States? How does that benefit anybody, right? I get what he's trying to say, which is that Shedeur Sanders has folks following him, and he has an intense following that reminds him of the following that maybe Barack Obama had amongst black folk in 2008. I get that that's what he's trying to say. But effectively what he's doing is raising the bar so high for Shedeur Sanders that it's going to make it plausible for him to never reach it. And because that's the case, people are going to be able to downplay stuff that Shedeur does successfully. Because the bar has been raised to that for no reason whatsoever. Again, I want to make this clear. When I have criticisms about the media, I'm not talking about fans. And this is no disrespect to fans. I love fans, obviously, but I am a fan. But fans don't dictate what the larger conversation is. So if you're a fan and you love Shedeur and you want to believe that he's as influential as Barack Obama, I heavily disagree with you, but it's your right to do that. It's your right to do that, right? If you want to believe that Shedeur Sanders is the next Tom Brady, I might disagree with you on that, but I'm not going to be mad at you for believing in a guy that you want to believe in, right? That's what sports is about. Believe in somebody you want to believe in, even if it's a little irrational. I don't have a problem with that. My problem is when it is people that are paid to do this, that are being ridiculous on purpose. Because there's no way Kendrick Perkins said that and didn't realize he was being ridiculous. He said that so he can be covered on different platforms and people could talk about him, and maybe so he could start to dip his toe into the NFL space as he tries to expand his influence at ESPN. I know why he said it. Look at where he worked. ESPN is the place where you go and say ridiculous shit and get paid for it. But ultimately, I think the tragedy in this is we know from other examples that this kind of hyping up is never good for the subject of the hype, who oftentimes did not ask for it. We'll talk about that more, but I got to thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. So you remember the examples I brought up at the beginning of this video. Tim Tebow, Johnny Manziel, now Shedeur Sanders. Now, Johnny Manziel certainly asked for all the hype in the world, and he got what he deserved, right? But Tim Tebow is a perfect example of this. Because Tim Tebow was such a media sensation. It was what allowed him to be drafted in the first round. As a prospect, Tim Tebow did not belong as a first round prospect. Everybody thought he was a day 3 guy based on his tape at Florida. But because he had a strong career, because of the media backing behind him, because of the fans that were supporting him, that is something that, ironically enough, worked in his way in a positive manner. When we get to Shedeur, that same stuff influences him in a negative manner, but that's a different conversation to have entirely. But for Tim Tebow, this pushed him to be a first-round pick, and the hype started to roll from there. Tim Tebow had a couple of good games. There's this thing called Tim Tebow Mania, and that's where we started to get the clips that we saw of Skip Bayless going and jumping the shark. Here's the problem with Tebow Mania. Tim Tebow, and let me double check this, despite winning a playoff game, despite having moments that would maybe suggest that he should get to play more, Tim Tebow ended up only playing those 11 starts in Denver, right? So his rookie year, he played a little bit at the end. His second year, he came in again, and he threw for what? 12 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 1,700 yards. He never had a negative touchdown interception ratio. But after his 2 years in Denver, he never got another opportunity to start and play quarterback. And the reason Tim Tebow never got another opportunity to start and play quarterback was because of the exhaustion everybody had of the Tebow hype. Nobody wanted to be a part of it after what had happened in Denver, after Skip Bayless jumps the shark, right? It just becomes another distraction, another annoying thing. People just saw what they saw in Tim, and they said to themselves, for what he is right now, it's not worth the effort to deal with when it comes to developing Tim Tebow. So Tim Tebow, despite, putting up some solid numbers for a quarterback, he never got a real chance to play, right? Got 11 games his second year, and that was it. That was it. Went 7-4 in those 11 games. Never got a chance to play. Why? Because people didn't want to deal with the nonsense that was Tebow Mania. This actually took Tebow out the NFL entirely. Now, look, say what you want about Tim Tebow and his ability to play quarterback. It did not look pretty while he was out there. But you're not going to tell me Tim Tebow, who was one of the greatest college football players of all time, couldn't stay in the NFL. Wasn't talented enough to stay in the NFL. Tim Tebow got pushed out the league because the NFL just got tired of dealing with it. NFL coaches got tired of dealing with it. NFL general managers got tired of having to answer questions about it. It just became too big of a deal for too little of a reward. So Tim Tebow didn't get to have the 10-year career, maybe not at quarterback, but as a utility guy, maybe a special teamer, like somewhere he could have helped the team for 10, 15 years, and he could have had a long career. But he didn't get that opportunity because the hype was too crazy. Johnny Manziel, whose hype was his own fault, so I don't really have any sympathy for Johnny Manziel. But Johnny Manziel, for reasons on top of the hype, it is also worth mentioning, right? Johnny Manziel's issues weren't just hype related. He also had a drug problem while he was playing quarterback, and he also did a lot of things that got him kicked out the league early. But the hype was a huge part of why Johnny Manziel, despite the fact that he came in a very hyped player, despite the fact that his second year, he actually improved in 2015 through 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and had a 41% success rate, was much improved from his first year. That was his last year in pro football because nobody wanted to give that a chance. Nobody wanted to see what else was there, right? The second the negativity came, the second that it was clear that this player wasn't going to live up to the gargantuan amount of hype, whether it was Tim Tebow or Johnny Manziel, the league said, oh, okay, well, he's not going to be that. We're done. We're not going to deal with it because the hype had gotten to a point to where it was only worth it if he would become one of the best players in the league. Once it was obvious he wasn't going to be that, it's over. Right now, the same exact thing is happening to Shedeur Sanders. And this is the most tragic one to me because Shedeur truly did not ask for any of this. He did not ask to fall in the draft. He did not ask to be a Sanders. He was just born into this. And because he was born into this, and because people have so many feelings about his father and all kind of stuff, because people have feelings about him and the fact that he raps or he has a chain or whatever, like all the goofy shit that people get mad about Shedeur about that has nothing to do with Shedeur or nothing to do with his ability to play football. It has created this dynamic that now has prominent people in the media saying stuff like Kendrick Perkins has said. And what Kendrick Perkins has said is just the beginning of the dialogue. If Shedeur Sanders has some success on Sunday, it's going to be crazy. If Shedeur Sanders does not have success on Sunday, the negative conversation about him is going to be insane. We are making an environment for Shedeur Sanders that's going to make it impossible for him to develop if we aren't careful. I understand that people in the media have enthusiasm about this. I understand that people in the media see an opportunity as far as money when it comes to this, but please appreciate that you can build this thing up to a point to where it actually hurts him. And that's all I've been asking people to be cautious of during this whole thing. I've been called everything but a child of God for trying to do this, and I think I'm doing this because it does benefit Shedeur in the long run to not have as much hype about him as he has had so far, because I have seen countless examples of that kind of thing shortening NFL careers prematurely. I think we're cutting off pathways for Shedeur to become a successful quarterback in the NFL, because right now, with the hype that's here, the only pathway for him to become a successful quarterback is if he's successful immediately in Cleveland. And that might not be what's going to work for Shedeur. I just hope we can all at some point be normal about this. Because the difference in this situation from Johnny Manziel and Tim Tebow is that Shedeur Sanders is a normal NFL quarterback prospect. And what I mean by that is Johnny Manziel, a lot of the polarization about him was because of his status as a prospect. People looked at the tape and they were polarized because what they saw was somebody who did not play football conventionally. Tim Tebow was another one that was polarizing because of the football. So you can argue with those two, there was less hope that they could develop from the beginning. But the hype kind of killed them at the end. I don't want the hype to kill somebody or to kill their career when they have all the ability in the world to become successful on some level in the NFL. Shedeur can play quarterback in the NFL, whether that's a backup, low-level starter, high-level starter, I don't know. But I think he can play quarterback in the NFL, and it would be a shame if he doesn't get the ability to develop into that and the ability to have highs, have lows without people losing their mind because people have decided to use him as a piece of content to further their media careers to a point to where it became toxic to his NFL career, which we're already seeing signs of, right? Like a huge part of the draft slide for Shedeur was because people felt like the media environment around him might be toxic. And we're starting to see why people felt that way. Again, last thing I'll say, and I'm out. I think it would benefit everybody to just be normal about Shedeur Sanders going forward. If he has some good games, let's praise him, but not go too far. If he has some bad games, let's be critical of it, but let's not go too hard, right? Let's be normal about this. But unfortunately, I can look around at the media environment right now, and when somebody's being compared to Barack Obama at the one game, you already know that the environment around it's not normal. So we know if he has a good game, the praise is not going to be in a normal place. And if he has a bad game, the criticism is going to be abnormal. And that's going to create the kind of environment that might shorten the amount of patience NFL evaluators have for him. And that would truly be tragic. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.